nothing more captivating for a user on a property portal than a 3D tour. And the technology of at an inflection point where users are increasingly expecting this as standard on every listing. Today I spoke to Andrew Nicholls, who's the CEO and founder of EyeSpy360, which is one of the companies at the leading edge of 3D tours. We spoke a bit about industry adoption and how some portals may have been hesitant until recently. We spoke about virtual reality and how far we might be off virtual reality home viewings. We also spoke a little bit about if his company intends to follow others in the Proptech sector down the IPO route. If you like the interview, don't forget to subscribe below. So, hi, Andrew. Thanks for being with us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll start with, could you tell me a little bit about what EyeSpy360 does?
So, EyeSpy360, we are one of the world's leading 360 virtual tour platforms. What makes us special, I guess, in many ways is we're probably the simplest, most affordable, feature-rich platforms out there that offer lots of flexibility in different areas, whether it comes to being able to brand your own tours, whether you want to use any of 56 different 360 cameras on the marketplace, or use our global photography network to go and capture all the spaces, including your 2D stills, etc. as well, or use your incumbent photographer as well. So there's many different aspects of our platform that are unique as well regarding certain features that we have. We were the pioneers of what we call EyeSpy Live, which allows you to do remote live viewings, which is hugely relevant right now, obviously with the pandemic and moving forward, I think with, from an environmental perspective as well. But yeah, in kind of a nutshell, that's who we are.
Okay, and an obvious question, but an interesting one potentially as well. How have the last 12 months been for your business and for the industry as a whole?
So for our business, great in many ways. I think, it's kind of bittersweet because what we have had is a lot of exposure because of the pandemic, because it's forced virtual tours to the forefront, which has been great for business. The thing that has done, I guess, in many ways is there's always been a bit of a barrier with regarding the portals taking on board the seriousness of virtual tours and making them front and center on their sites instead of very low down, if nowhere. What this has done is obviously allowed them to kind of catalyze the inevitable, which I believe anyway, which is they're going to have to start using virtual tours. I believe they're going to become the norm. We're slowly starting to see that. I think we're very close to a tipping point. I was talking to one of the largest portals in the States recently, and one of the things they were telling me was because of the exposure virtual tours have had, consumers are now being exposed to them a lot more than they were historically, and now they are now driving demand. Which is important. They're driving demand to agents. Agents are now realizing actually we need to provide these because we've got our customers asking for them. And at the same time, what it's doing is allowing agents to see the benefits of virtual tours, the time saving, getting rid of wasted viewings. And we're seeing businesses take that on board now by changing some of the KPIs around that it's not necessarily about how many physical viewings have you done. It's about just getting the deal done and the viewings done, doesn't matter whether it's virtual or not virtual. So it's brought everything to the forefront, which has been something we've been pushing and striving for 3 years. So it's catalyzed a lot of things under obviously, difficult circumstances for most people as well. But I strongly believe it's going to continue, and it's a product, it's a feature that people like moving forward.
Okay, you mentioned there that perhaps the portals haven't been so quick on the uptake with virtual tours. I've actually just seen, literally within the last couple of hours, Zillow have announced something quite big. I think they've just released a press release saying that they're going to be doing their own technology around this. But would you say it's incumbent on the portals or incumbent on the agents? Because I imagine the portals argument has been it's incumbent on the agents.
So it's twofold. I think it's a mixture of all of them. So one thing that's unique about our platform, going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, is we're probably the only virtual tour platform that allow you to white label our platform and integrate it into your own ecosystem, being a portal CRM business. We did that very early on a few years ago with some early adopter portals. So ImmoWeb, for example, in Belgium, they have our platform integrated into their system. Daft in Ireland have integrated our platform, and again, they're offering it out. What you also see, you've got Zillow, who've got their own solution, which is actually through an acquisition they did about 3 or 4 years ago. it's quite a basic platform, but nonetheless, it's an offering in the market. I think what we are seeing, and it's interesting in different ways, is that a lot of the portals out there are going to stay agnostic with regarding which virtual tours they use. As you're aware, there's a few different offerings out there. Some are good, some are great, some bad, whatever. But we strongly believe we're at the top of that kind of marketplace, and that's something we've had from feedback from customers. Now, one thing we have seen, if you look at certain areas, so if you look at, let me just pull some of the information I've got here as well. But if you look at some areas, so let's look at the Middle East. The Middle East has got about 1.8% absorption on the basis of total number of listings, how many of those have virtual tours on. If you look at some other areas as well, let me just pull these up so I'm getting them right. So if we look at Asia, they got about 1.1% right now uptake. USA is about 1.4% on average. Middle East, sorry, I actually got that wrong, was about 2.98%. In Belgium, where ImmoWeb is, where we've got an integration, you're looking at about 8.72%. And Ireland with DART, for example, is 5.51%. So where you've got portals that have integrated their own solution and pushing that out to the market, you're seeing greater adoption. I think that's probably because obviously they're marketing it, but they've got their own solution as well. We are in talks with quite a number of portals where we're kind of at POC stage right now, and moving forward with integration, some of the largest property portals in the world. And they want to have their own solution, they want to push their own solution, while still remaining agnostic. And I think that's important to do, because you don't want to push anyone out there. And ultimately, you want to give the agents the choice of which platform they use, and they will use different platforms, for various different reasons. So, going back to the original point, there's been some portals out there that have been early adopters and said, this is going to be future, this is where we're going. There's been some other ones that have been very hesitant about doing that. And I think a lot of it's down to control as well. Just thinking, these are lead generators, they're providing a lead. We would need to control and monetize that lead ourselves. And I totally understand that. But we are working with, and we have worked with portals where we're providing all the data, all the information back to them to enable them to do that. Whether it's EyeSpy Live and they're using the live virtual tours and moving from being a search platform to a viewing platform as well, we're providing all that data back. And I think that's one thing that's important about our platform. Although we can completely white label it, and also white label our global photography network. So not only do they have their own platform to offer, they're also having their own photography network to offer as well. They're also we allow them to own that data. It's their data. So we're providing everything back for them. So, yes, it's kind of incumbent on the agents themselves to start pushing it, and that's going to be driven from the customer. But also the portals have been to some extent the bottleneck preventing that adoption and the consumer seeing it. But that's now changed massively. I do not know one portal right now that doesn't allow virtual tours and is not currently or in the next few weeks going to be making it kind of on the carousel and front and center.
Do you think we're at or close to the inflection point? And obviously there's different regional differences with that. What has been, so obviously real estate is only part of what you guys do. I was reading that you work with the police, you work with all kinds of other different sectors. What's perhaps the most common request you get from people? And what kind of overlaps are there between the different sectors you work with?
Regarding, are you talking about features or?
Just in general, if people in the real estate sector are generally asking for the same technology, or if it's very different. I just found it interesting. I read somewhere that the same technology that you use to tour a house can be used to solve a crime, for example.
Oh yeah. So absolutely. I mean, it's just the ability to walk through a space. Fundamentally, is it kind of the main overlap. So whether it's the police force, whether it's maritime, aviation, whether it's commercial, residential property with inventories, inspections, hotels, restaurants, bars, it pretty much is the ability to walk and navigate through a space. That's the kind of the main overlap between those different industries as well. There's nuances between them and differences that each one will have, and we're developing features around that depending on the vertical. So for example, it's still within property, but if you look at the developer, one of the developers wants to, the development sector would prefer to have somewhere where they've got a kind of time lapse, and they can look through the different stages of the development. So maybe have going back and forth between what it looked like in February, March, April, May, June, etc. as well. the information labels that we have. But it's a very simple, feature, but it allows people to add content, rich content into that as well, which could be provided someone just talking about a specific feature of the actual property. It could be in the police force, someone talking about, the bullet holes, for example, in the crime scene, and being able to discuss that to the jury. There's lots of different reasons, but we are trying to build out, features that can be adopted by the masses. But there's certain nuances that are there. But I don't think there's anything drastic. There's nothing massively different between what we're seeing right now.
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about virtual reality, which is something that, I don't know, a few years ago was talked about maybe a little bit more. And
yeah,
despite all the investment from people like Facebook and Apple, we're not, for the end user, we're not that much closer to actually seeing it, especially in real estate. Whereas perhaps a few years ago, we might have thought people would be using big VR headsets to tour properties where we are now, 2021. Do you see this still as a long way off, or is it purely hardware dependent, or is there a culture factor at work here?
I think it's a mixture of all of them. I think you've got it's the hardware's a big obstacle in this as well. And I think still to this day, where we are with hardware is where mobile phones were when it was a big bulky unit you just had to carry around on your shoulder, and it just wasn't practical at that point in time. I think we're still there with headsets as well. I think it's still kind of a battle between, is it going to be VR or AR, so augmented reality, virtual reality, which one's going to be the best, or is it going to be a mixture of the two, so mixed reality? Personally, I think there's probably going to be, when we get to that point, I think there's going to be a greater demand for augmented reality over virtual reality, so a blend of the non-real and the real environment. I think that's going to probably play out better, where you can actually walk around and see buildings, and then those buildings might change color depending on occupancy rate or what's available for rental sales, etc. as well. So I think there's some things like that you're going to be looking at. COVID hasn't helped at all, because obviously just from a VR perspective, no one really wants to share different headsets and put them on people. So I think that's hindered it. It's it's the big tech giants, so they're pushing this as much as they can. Apple are, theoretically, as far as we know, working on something to do with augmented reality, and be bringing that out. Probably likely to happen, when we don't know. Sony have obviously toyed around with PlayStation with VR headsets as well, but they're not pushing it as much with the PS5 because they've not seen the adoption rates as high as they want. But a lot of it's just down to content as well. Like anything, you can have the greatest hardware out there, but if no one's building content or tools for it, is it going to take off? And I just don't think the general public are ready for it yet either. I think people don't necessarily want it can be quite an insular experience in many ways as well. I love VR. I've got loads of different headsets, and I love what you can do with them. But I'm a bit of a geek. I'm a kind of early adopter techie type. Can I see most people I know, friends and family, using it? Not right now, no. I think when it becomes a pair of glasses, you can go to Vision Express or somewhere and buy them, and then it all changes, and that's years away. I think that's 5, 10, 15 years away until we're going to see mass adoption. Is it relevant for the real estate industry? Probably earlier than that, yes. But again, it's just going to come down to when people are comfortable doing it.
Okay, interesting. Last question from me. We've seen a lot of a bit of a frenzy in the Proptech sector for IPOs recently, and especially a big one in Matterport. Is this a route that you think EyeSpy360 might go down? Is it something that you're being pushed towards? And how can we expect more tech companies to go down this route in the next year or so?
Yeah, I think so. There's IPOs. There's lots of talk about SPACs and what they're doing right now as well. And it's not something we've been pushed down either within the business or through our investors. We're just focused on very different things right now, which is just building out a very strong feature set, building out a great product, and delivering a great service to our customers. And as we have seen, we've been growing quite extensively by pushing that as much as we can. Are we going to IPO, or are we going to partner with a company and merge in the same way that Matterport has? I don't know. There's nothing on the horizon for us to even contemplate that right now. Do I think that's something for Proptech companies moving forward? Very possibly. Do I know of anyone else doing it? No, not right now.
Fair enough, well answered. Andrew, thanks very much for talking to us today. Look forward to seeing how EyeSpy360 gets on, and definitely look forward to seeing how more property portals take on the technology that guys like you are building.
Fine, thank you very much.
That's one, thank you.